Welcome, everyone, to the Dr. Blue Duck podcast. And today we have a very special, maybe an interesting, non conventional guest today, and that is the famous TikTok Dinx the Puppet. What's up, Dinx?
Hey, how you doing today?
So, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dinx, but Dinx is gaining a lot of popularity right now, especially on TikTok, because Dinx the Puppets, and we're going to have his traveling companion on this podcast here in a moment. But Dinx the Puppet is a puppet on social media who talks about theological issues and answers some very difficult theological issues that us gaming dads might need to be familiar with. So, Diggs, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do exactly?
Most of what I do is question and answer. People often have questions in the comments, and if I haven't made a video answering it in a while, or sometimes I get a rare one where I haven't answered it at all, I will answer the questions according to Scripture as best I can. And sometimes, I get things wrong, and sometimes it's debatable matters, so I give the best answer I can. But that's most of the content. Now, here lately, yeah, I have been blowing up. I've been going kind of viral lately because of some. Not sure what they're called, but responsive videos where I dice up, kind of an argument that someone makes, but I, interject every now and then. That's been doing really well here lately. And so TikTok's actually catching up with Instagram.
I came across you. I was just searching through TikTok on, my Dr. Blue Duck TikTok, and I came across a puppet. And when you see puppets, there's a lot of people that do puppets bad or they do puppets
Very
poorly.
bad. Yeah.
And so when I see a puppet, and growing up in a Christian church myself since like the sixth grade, that's when my parents started going to church. Puppets were like a big thing in like
Yeah.
80s and 90s, like ministry back in the day. So I think I was on the puppet team for a little while. And so when I see a puppet, I'm always a little bit interested. I stop and I'm just like, I want to see how bad this actually turns out. But you were answering some questions and you were doing it to a degree that I stopped and I listened and I continued to listen. And then I went to some of your other videos and I listened to those. And then I brought my wife in and I showed her your videos and she was impressed as well because you're tackling some of these more difficult theological issues, but you're doing it with great evidence and sound logic where when people reply, they're not even replying always in a way where they're attacking your evidence, but they're more just kind of just attacking maybe you or just
Yeah.
just kind of just being angry. So
Yeah.
how do you do that, Dinks? How do you respond so well to a lot of these questions and comments?
Well, the best thing is that I can re-record. I mean, that's the best. That's the honest truth. If I record something and I don't like how I said it, I can re-record it. And that's honestly a huge advantage that I have over someone who might be like street witnessing. They could lose their temper and it's right there in front of everybody. But I can re-record it so I can be as calm as I need to be. And sometimes I'm intentionally not calm. Sometimes I might, grind their gears a bit, but it's always kind of tactical, if that makes sense. I want to make sure that if I'm being harsh, it's with someone who needs a harsh word, but if I'm being kind, it's with someone who needs a kind word. Jesus did both. That's our example. And he called Peter Satan, but yet the Canaanite woman, he granted her, request for her daughter. So there's a wide variety of everything that Jesus did, and so I try to be all things to all people that I might by all means win some. That's kind of the idea there. But really, the editing, the short form video was just a huge thing that's made this possible. Puppetry really hasn't been popular since the Muppets, and the Muppets haven't been popular since the 90s. And, we are the Muppet generation. That's why it matters to us. But the main thing is that most of my audience are adults, and I want it that way. There's no point in doing puppets for kids because kids typically don't care about puppets. That's the truth. It's just not spectacular enough. And so I have always known that adults love puppets more than kids. They just don't admit it. But so I just tackle whatever subjects need to be tackled, and sometimes I do put out warnings there or reminder videos that this is not a kid's channel. And so I do get comments from people saying, "Hey, I watch you with my kids," and I'm like, "That's great. Make sure you look at the topic before you watch it with them."
Yeah, definitely. And I really like that response. This video podcast is designed and aimed at gaming dads. And I feel like gaming dads, we respond in the same way. Sometimes with our kids, we need to be very gentle. We need to be very calm or collective. But sometimes we have to raise the voice, not to where we're screaming hysterically, but to the point where they know that this is a serious matter. If my soon to be 2-year old little boy is getting ready to run out into a busy intersection, I might yell for him to know that, wow, this is something serious. This is something very dangerous. Whereas in other situations, if he just plays with something he's not supposed to play with, I'm just going to say, hey, no, son, let's put that back up. That's not for you to play with. That's a tool or something else. You can play with your toy. So I really see that in the videos that I have watched where you are gentle, where it needs to be gentle. And overall, I think mostly you are very gentle. You're very calm and controlled and very kind and generous in
Oh,
your
thanks. I
response.
do tend to be snarky sometimes, though.
Yeah, and that's just real life, and I like to see those. I think the audience does too. Like to see those real life characteristics come out through Dinks the puppets. So Dinks, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us, and it would be nice maybe if we could talk to your travel companion here and hear
You want to
maybe a
talk?
little bit about him. Is
You
he
want to
there?
talk? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he'll talk to you, sure.
Okay, let's go ahead and have him out, and we're
All
gonna we're
right.
gonna refer to him as the traveling companion. So those who are gonna maybe leave comments, you can ask about the traveling companion here.
Well,
And
as
he,
you can tell, I've got the dad bod to go with the channel here. So
so the traveling companion is gonna stay mysterious here for reasons because we don't want to take away from Dinks the puppet. Traveling companion, let's hear a little bit about you. Now you're a dad, right?
I am, yes.
Do you have a lot of kids, couple kids,
I
one
have
kid,
one daughter. One
one
daughter.
daughter? Cool.
Yeah. Yep. She's 12 years old and every bit of 15.
And what is that called? A 12-ager, teenager, 12-ager? I don't know what they call
12
it.
ager.
12-ager. And the traveling companion, let's see, you have played some Nintendo Switch and some
hmm
Zelda games before, right? You want to talk about those?
Well, I've had a few consoles over the years. I've grown up with video games. Our first console we had was the NES and then the SNES, so I grew up with video games as a kid. But right now, yeah, I have a Switch. We upgraded from a Wii probably a year and a half ago. Yes, the original Wii, not the Wii U. I mean, I'm I'm very gradual in my upgrades. But yeah, if I need some time just to not think about anything, that's a good opportunity for me to do that. So I might play Zelda or Mario Kart or Outer Worlds or just one of those games that I enjoy. Not really big on the first person shooters, although I do have to say I did play Halo once, just once, and it was at a youth lock-in, and this was like the original Halo. Okay,
Yeah.
I had no idea how these controls work. There were just too many knobs and things on the and I kept dying and dying. But then this new round starts. I see there's a tank, and so I hop into this tank somehow, and then I
Yeah.
just start picking off the teens from the other side of the battlefield, and they're like, "How are you doing that?" And I just look at them. I say, "GoldenEye."
Good old GoldenEye. So for
That's
those
right.
of you who are younger, might not remember the 007 days, the Bond
Mm.
days back
N64.
the Nintendo 64. My buddy Sean, if you're listening to this, I'm saying what's up to you. We actually, Sean and I just grabbed breakfast yesterday morning, but one of my friends from my childhood and high school years, and we used to just, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, just play Bond. It was like one of those things that's like, dude, what's up? Bond? Yeah, Bond, let's do it. And we just play for hours, and it was
Yep.
fun. Being the traveling companion of Dinks, what's your like background? I mean, obviously you're knowledgeable. How did you get such knowledge?
Well, I appreciate that. So, I'd love to say that I have a doctorate in seminary and all that stuff, but I don't. Honestly, more than anything, self-taught. Now, I mean, I am technically a pastor, but on the local level. I've been credentialed at my local church on the local level just because they want to support my ministry. So I come under their umbrella. So I'm kind of from their perspective, I'm kind of like a social media missionary type of an idea.
Yeah.
But most of my education just is self-taught. I learned a lot from John MacArthur, and I'm glad he's home with the Lord now. But when this was a long time ago now. I'm feeling old talking about it. But I used to deliver for a living, and so in the delivery truck, I would sit and listen to Christian talk radio, and Grace to You would always come on during when I was delivering, but then I would always miss parts, and it wasn't his whole sermon. So I found that John MacArthur had all of his sermons, literally every single sermon he ever spoke was free online, and you could download. So I just started downloading and listening. I got through probably half of his database. I was listening
Nice.
to like 3 to 6 sermons a day, 5 days a week. And that was really the foundation of my education. Now, I don't agree with everything John taught. For one thing,
Yeah.
I'm Pentecostal. He
Yeah.
clearly wasn't,
Yeah.
but he still was the foundation. And he is someone who was brilliant with the Bible and loved the Lord. And I'll never say a bad word about him. But that was kind of my foundation. And from there, I would pick up other teachers that would teach something that made sense, but then I would check it with scripture to make sure that okay, is this right? Is this right? Especially if they caught me off guard with something. I'm going to make sure this is right. So just doing that most of my life since then, just watching people on TikTok or YouTube or what have you. Most of my education has been from people who are smarter than me, or maybe they focus on a particular field better than I do, and just gaining all of these little nuggets. And that's the way my brain kind of works, is I'll retain these nuggets, and they just kind of come up when I need them.
That's so neat that you were in delivery and doing that and listening to those sermons, because a lot of gaming dads out there might also not have a seminary degree or might not have gone to school to study theology. Probably most of them have not. But I think it's good for them to know what they believe spiritually so that when their kids someday are confused or come up and have questions, that we can be prepared as dads to give them answers. And it's like,
Well, yeah.
what are we going to tell them when they ask those spiritual questions?
Well, the first off, there's nothing wrong with the words "I don't know,"
Yeah.
because you can always follow it up with the words "Let me find out." I had a blunt conversation with my dad before he passed. I said, because I had been, on fire for God for, for like a decade at that point. My dad really started his walk. I mean, we grew up in the church, but he really started his walk probably a year or two before I talked to him. And I said, Dad, I need you to be a spiritual leader for me. And he said, how can I lead you? You know a lot more about the Bible than I do. I said, you don't have to know more than me to be the leader. You just have to do it in front of me.
Yeah.
And that was the point. And so for every father out there, no, you're not going to know as much as the pastor. That's not your job. Your job is to show your family what it's like to follow Christ, not what it's like to be right all the time.
Yeah. And I think asking the right questions is really key too. And I feel like people ask questions online on Instagram, and so TikTok, and you actually kind of answer some of those questions, or they make statements where you can obviously tell they didn't ask the right questions, and you can go in and kind of give the right answers to those.
Yeah, sometimes there's a course correction needs to happen in the video itself. Because they might ask, well, why did Judas, get saved anyway? Well, no, that's not, let's not go straight there. Let's talk about was he saved at all to begin with? Was he when he died? Let's talk about all those things. And then if there is debate on it, I'll be honest about it and say, this is a debated topic. Here's where I feel it lands.
And I feel like I love a lot of what John MacArthur did. And that's one reason why I really appreciate John MacArthur, is because even when you read his commentaries or you're reading the John MacArthur study Bible, he does kind of throw out different perspectives. There's this belief, and there's this belief, and he kind of lets you know which one he follows or believes, but he kind of throws those out there. And that's where I kind of think if you come from a Pentecostal background or a Calvary Chapel background or Reformed background, whatever it is, you can
Hmm.
kind of respect and appreciate the books and the sermons that John MacArthur actually created for us for those ways. I remember going to church for the first time in the sixth grade. I went to a very Pentecostal church. It was kind of a very mom and pop, hole in the wall church. And it was great for our family because we had a family death and we just needed people to love on us and hug us and kind of bring us into their church family. But theologically, some things were happening that the sixth grader me, I was kind of confused about. I remember one time sitting in one of the pews, and a man during the worship service got up and he just ran full speed and whack right into a wall where it almost knocked him out. And he got back up and he ran full speed, bam, back into that wall, and it practically knocked him out. And he got up and got ready to do it again. And I turned to my dad, the sixth grade year old me, and I said, Dad, what's happening to that man? And my dad said, well, I think he's like filled with the Holy Spirit. And I said, but so what's that mean? And my dad said, well, I guess God's making him do that. And I said, well, why would God be hurting him?
Yeah.
And my dad's response was, I don't know.
That's the best answer right there. Yeah, they,
Yeah, and
yeah,
the authenticity in his voice of "I don't know," it really set something in me where, wow, I need to study the word and I need to know these answers. And becoming a dad later in life than most people, it really created that responsibility so much more that I need to know not just for myself, but I need to know for my two little boys that are going to be growing up in a very different world that I've grown up in a very maybe more difficult world to some degrees. And they're going to have so many more questions. And I want to be prepared, or if I'm not prepared, to know how to provide those answers. And I feel like that's one reason why I really wanted Dinx the Puppet to be on this podcast is this channel, even though it's a puppet, your channel as a puppet, it still provides very profound and deep argumentative answers and positive, maybe critiquing answers for complex issues, or maybe question or issues that aren't really so much complex, but they are complex in our society today. And
yeah, our society's made them complex.
exactly.
Yeah.
And to answer those when a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of people who do have a platform or who do have a voice do not answer them. And if they do answer them, they're answered as my personal opinion, not being answered in a way where you're actually providing logical and sound biblical support.
Right. Well, and there's a couple things to say. And just first off, I want to clarify for all of your viewers, Pentecostal is a wide range term.
Yeah,
We don't all run into walls, and we don't all
exactly.
handle snakes, and we don't all wear skirts. Okay. Pentecostal just simply means you're a denomination that believes that the gifts of the Holy Spirit are still in operation. There are some very tame Pentecostals out there. I'm one of those. I attend an Assembly of God church. So if you want to see more tame, like things done decently in order and not legalistic, and we do believe in the Trinity, that's Assemblies of God. Okay, but I just want to make that clarification. But as far as the topics, what I've found is that doing the short form video platforms like Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, which I'm on all four of those, what that allows me to do is say what needs to be said because my paycheck is not dependent on it. I have a day job, and the day job is extremely flexible. Sometimes it's very demanding, but it's very flexible. So I can have that time to record. I can have that time to edit, and it takes more time than I wanted to. But it's for the right reasons, and it's not for the paycheck. So I don't have to answer to a church board. I don't have to say, well, if I say the wrong thing, they could fire me. Well, who cares? I just have three other platforms. If TikTok fires me, who cares? And so that frees me to be able to do that. And I think that is something that has locked a lot of pastors is just this fear of I don't want to make people upset because I have to see them next week. And if I make people upset, who cares? They're probably not coming back.
Yeah. And that's one thing neat about not depending or being involved in ministry where you are it's not your vocational. You're not a vocational minister, it's not part of your vocation. And that's what's neat about doing podcasts or social media where your job isn't dependent upon it. And it's like, my channel doesn't really make any money, and it's fun. If someone gets on here and they're like, "Hey, I can't stand you, I hate you," it's like, cool, just find someone else to listen to. There's a lot of other people online, but for those
Yeah.
people who do like the channel, I mean, that's my audience, and it's like,
I have found a handful of other Christian gamers out there. Just a handful.
yeah,
There's one I came across. Pops up every so often. I don't remember his name because I don't follow him, but he comes up every so often. But another name that's really big out there, his handle is True Christian Ministry.
nice.
So he comes up in TikTok, but he also has a gaming channel as well. So when he does gaming, he's still able to talk to people about the Lord and things like that. So I just want you to know you're not alone.
Good, good. And what I'm finding is doing this Dr. Blue Duck video podcast for gaming dads, what we're finding is there's a lot of more solid dads who are believers out there who are kind of coming out. And that's kind of one of the points of this channel, is to build that community so that they can encourage each other and use gaming in the proper way. Kind of how you mentioned when you were talking about gaming, kind of doing as a break, just kind of rest your mind a little bit. And that we talk a lot about that on this channel, of gaming for us dads is just it's not an escape, it's just a break. We're not doing it to escape our responsibilities or escape our families or our ministry or our jobs. It's a way to re-energize. And sometimes we just need to kind of shut off all the stress and noise and drama and conflict, and just rest for a little bit, and then come back to life and come back recharged, ready to go. So, man, traveling companion, that's great. What do you think is the future of Dinks the Puppet?
Well, I try not to think ahead, honestly, because with us and with where the world is, our ministries could end like that across the board. TikTok could say no more Christian media. They already shadow ban us. They already, treat us very unfairly as far as negative comments. They'll let any hate towards Christians, sit in the comments section. So at any point, all this stuff could go away. So I don't make plans for the future. I'm just today. Here's what I'm doing as far as Dinks goes. Here's the videos I'm posting today. Here's the videos I might be recording today. Here's the videos I'm editing today. It's just today. And if at any point God says it's done, then it's done. And I'll wait to see what another thing he has. I don't really foresee anything with Dinks specifically because he's very he's not really usable outside of short form media, because the short form video is really what has made him popular. People don't go to puppet shows, not typically, not unless they've got a bunch of kids, because parents assume the kids like puppets and then they end up not liking them, and then they get frustrated with their kids because their kids aren't paying attention, and like, no, if you really wanted a good puppet show, yeah, I mean, I've seen some spectacular ones, but they're always on adult level if they're actually good. So there's really not much I could do with him if this ends. But I don't really have any big plans or future plans as far as that goes.
My family, we have Disney Plus for the older Disney films to show the kids the animations that I grew up on, and being an art teacher, that's kind of important to me. But every once in a while, I'll try to show them like the Muppet Show. And
Hmm.
I'm like, hey, this is the Muppet Show. You want to watch it? After like 3 minutes, they're over it. Like, they're not into puppets. And it's kind of sad, because
Yeah.
when I was growing up, it was all about puppets. And so I have two more questions for you, Mr. Human Companion. One of those is, I mean, I can kind of figure it out, but just to hear you explain it, why the need to be anonymous here?
So that is a pride protection for me. My name is out there, and my face is out there. If you really wanted to find it, you could, and it's going to come up with a bunch of things from my past because, well, I'll come back to that. But it is a pride protection for me. I don't want my face to be the thing that's recognizable. I already have enough of a pride problem. I don't need to add to it. Now, the reason why my name and face is able to be found out there is because I did not start off actually doing Christian content. I started off doing Star Wars content with him. Same format, question answer, because I was watching videos where a bunch of people who knew nothing about Star Wars were giving answers that were completely wrong. I was like, hey, I could do better than that. And I just started answering questions on my own, and it really took off. I got to 200,000 followers in less than a year. But when I started branching out into the other platforms, I didn't set up Facebook correctly, and so they were able to link it to my personal account. And so that's, they went and searched for posts that they could use to discredit me, because that's what some people do with their life. And so I got called homophobic and racist, even though neither of those is the case. The whole thing collapsed. If there's one thing Star Wars content creators, the other content creators hate more than a conservative, it's a Christian. So since I was both, I got death threats and got written up in articles, even USA Today. Hey, how about that? I'm famous. But I shut it all down. Just shut it down. Like Star Wars is not worth dying for. If I'm getting death threats, I'm just going to shut it down. And I thought I deleted everything. I almost deleted almost everything. Now, it did turn out that when I came back, I actually figured out that my Star Wars videos on Instagram actually were still there. So if you go to my Instagram account and scroll all the way to the bottom, there are still some Star Wars videos down there. When I came back, I was actually originally was not going to come back to TikTok because I really didn't want to face that hate that would come with it. I felt like God was kind of saying to me, isn't that where the people are that need me? Yeah, okay, yeah, I get that. And so I knew what I had to do. It made perfect sense. I'm going to do what I did for Star Wars, but I'm going to do it for the Bible. That just like, yep, makes perfect sense. And it's really done well. And I've never had a ministry that's had more fruit than this.
That's so neat. And it's so sad because we might have some people listening that don't agree with biblical concepts, and that's okay because we want everyone here on, this podcast to, have a place where they can connect with other gaming dads. But it's just, to me, and to a lot of other people, if you really think about it, it's sad that so many people get so angry just because you're not in favor of something. Some people want to send you death threats, and they want to cancel you, and they want to destroy you. And it's like, why? I mean, it's okay for us not to be in favor of certain things in life. And that's one thing about even the human race, is that we are going to have different beliefs. We are going to have different opinions, and us sharing those on social media and sharing those online, just because we're not in favor of something doesn't mean that, we're hateful or we want harm for those people. It just means that we just don't agree with everything. And I think that's okay. And I think it's really sad that that happened, and you did have to do that, and you did get those death threats, and hopefully we don't get any here.
Well, I will say that what was surprising about coming back, though, is I was expecting this onslaught of just people hating from before, but honestly, they left me alone for the most part. I still occasionally get someone who comes up and say, "Hey, I remember you." It's almost non-existent. I'm not gonna say it's non-existent, but it's almost non-existent. And I think it's because from their perspective, I'm in my lane. So they don't really come after me as if I tried coming back to Star Wars, and they probably would. So I think you're pretty safe in your area because yeah, you're gaming dads, but you're not shy about being a Christian.
Yeah.
And I think most people understand that with your viewing audience. So even they don't necessarily agree with you, they understand that you're going to have certain perspectives they don't agree with. Whereas with Star Wars, everybody expects you to be, some kind of, liberal, social justice warrior type of person.
And another question for you here, probably the last main question here, Mr. Human Companion. That is this. I mean, it seems like you are a somewhat ambitious person. You have really done a lot of studying. You have done a lot of reading. You have a job that you have to take care of your family. You're a dad, which that takes up a lot as well. And you have this pretty successful, I would say it's a successful social media puppet ministry of Dinx the Puppets. And now, how do you do all that and not lose balance in your life? How do you do all that and still be a present father and someone who is mentally and spiritually healthy?
Well, like I said, my job does have a lot of flexibility. So that some days I work until 8 p.m., but other days I'm off at noon and I start at 6 a.m. both days. So it just really depends. But the time is there to do it. That's the thing. I'm not taking away time to do it. If I'm editing with my family in the room, it's because my wife and daughter don't need my attention, not because I'm taking it away from them. If maybe they're watching TV, maybe it's TV time, and I'll just do editing. They know I'm doing editing then. But if it's dinner time, I'm not going to have my phone at the table. So it's about intentionality. It's about choosing to be present at the moments you need to be present. So I would imagine, it's the same thing with video games. I don't play video games when my daughter needs my attention. I play video games when she doesn't want, my attention. And so, it's sometimes it's tricky. Sometimes I get behind on things, but the family has to come first. As important as this ministry is, if I fail with my daughter, I've failed the whole thing.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that's a reminder for a lot of things. And whatever we're called to in our lives with our hobbies or our passions or our side gigs or even our jobs, if we fail in our family, we're a failure, right? I mean, that's one of our biggest callings in life. I'd probably say number one as a Christian is to worship him with your entire life. And then next to that is our families. And that's one reason why I put a lot of emphasis in gaming dads and to really try to find a place, a channel to encourage and to support gaming dads. And even for gaming dads, if they want to, if they need prayer, they can even put it in the comments. They can, request that and to kind of build that community. It's so important. And I appreciate you mentioning the importance on that. Even if you have something that's blowing up online, it's more important to put your family first. And I even think about, speaking about the Bible, it's interesting when Jesus came to his apostles and he said to cast the nets on the certain side, and they pulled it up and there was all these fish. His disciples had all this fish, and they were fishermen. So those ones right there were fishermen. So that was like their income. That was like their success in life. But then he like says, okay, now come with me. It's almost kind of like if you were to think about that today, it's like, what if you had like a TikTok or social media and God told you to do something and you did it and it just blew up and you just got millions of followers and views and everything. And then God says, hey, okay, now leave that behind and follow me. And it's like I hope and I pray that our hearts are those where we would say, okay, I'll do that. And I
Well,
feel
yeah.
and I feel like I see that a little bit in you when you talk about, hey, the future of Dinks the Puppet, we don't know. You don't know. God might end it tomorrow or allow it to be ended tomorrow, or he might tell you to end it tomorrow, or he might grow into something that we possibly couldn't even imagine.
Well, the way I look at that is, if we look at the story that you just mentioned, where he supremely blessed that effort, but then said, okay, now you have to leave it behind. Well, if that happens to me, it's the same reason as it happened to them, so that others can know. It's not about the fame, it's not about the money, it's not about, being the most successful. It's about obedience, because the moment I go chasing after the blessing instead of the blesser, I'm going to end up losing the blessing. That's the last of the blessing I get if I chase that blessing and not the one who blessed. And so if it all shuts down, then I'll make one last video saying, if I can, I'll just say, this is it. Here's why. And best of luck to you guys. I'll pray for you, pray for me, because the testimony is going to be God had something else, therefore I obeyed. And if that's my last lesson that they need to learn from me, then that's a great lesson to learn.
And I think that is a great lesson to kind of end this podcast on right there, Mr. Human Companion, because that is something that we just kind of need to, write that down and remember that. And just exactly what you said, like we shouldn't be chasing after the blessing, but the blesser. And I think if we do that, our lives are going to line up instead of chasing after all these things that are going to fade away. And we're tempted to do that as dads, as gaming dads. Sometimes there's all this stuff we want to chase after, but if we can just quit chasing after all that stuff and just kind of focus on the real things that matter in life, which obviously is God. It's, the things God has called us to do, our family, loving them, taking care of them and others. Man, it's like I think that's gonna really that it's so funny because when you focus on the blesser, it's actually going to give us more blessing.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Maybe not in the material sense, but it will be a bigger blessing.
Amen to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know Dinx is back there. Thank you, Dinx. Thank you, Mr. Human Companion. And as always, guys, thank you for listening to this video podcast. We'll catch you next time. And as always, be kind, use your mind, and game on.